Hello, everyone, and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Belial, Blaleth, something
I'm sorry,
like
I can't
that.
help you.
It's Byleth. I'm having trouble, H.
So I probably can't call you that then. Is that the message that I'm getting?
I think that's the message you're getting, because here's the deal. I have started playing a game that I didn't really think I would ever sort of mess with, which is Fire Emblem's Three Houses.
Okay, cool. I learned all about this on the Nintendo's Three House Live they do during E3.
I've never really taken to these type of games before. You remember weeks ago, maybe months ago, I was toying with the idea of partaking in Wargroove. I said these sort of long-form strategy games aren't typically my thing. And I bought this thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe I can get my partner, my fiancée, Jessica, to play with me. I brought it home and I was like, look, there's like calendar management and teaching and all this stuff. And she was like, I don't want to do any of that. So I've been left to my own devices. I'm actually really enjoying it. I almost came to the show with some sort of pitch for like a school education game today, but I didn't have anything quite fully formed.
Okay, and you always want to come with a fully formed pitch, just so it hurts that much more to watch it change completely.
That's right. Just get really, really
It's like your
attached to it.
students in Fire Emblem, watching them go out into battle. It only really becomes apparent the peril that they're in once you spend that much time with them, teaching them and tutoring them. So you're going into each of these houses, which have kind of a predetermined number of students. And I know that permadeath is a thing in the Fire Emblem universe. And so if you lose a significant number of the students, like what happens? Like how does the story go on from there? So
I'm playing, like, here we go. I have to admit it on my video game podcast, a filthy casual in casual mode. So my characters don't actually die.
Okay.
They're just out for the rest of the battle. And I haven't even gotten that far into it. I've only played like maybe 2 or 3 hours, but I've spent most of my time walking around this school and engaging with my students and giving them study assignments. And I can't believe some of the thoughtfulness, the mechanics of like, hey, why don't you pair people together in study groups? And if they share common interests, they'll get along and therefore do better. And there's all these tiny little touches that like feel really thoughtful. I mean, it should be no surprise, it's Nintendo, but I don't think I've played a game quite like this that seems as, well, I guess Nintendo is this.
All right. Well, that's a ringing endorsement. Let's check in with you back maybe 80 episodes from now and see how it's going. Probably be about halfway through the story by then.
Yeah, but through part 1 anyway.
Cool. Let's get to some video game pitches. I'll be going first today. And what I want to get into, there's a bunch of video games that center around different industries, different, Overcooked for chefs and Cook Serve Delicious for chefs. Mostly it's chefs that are being well catered to. No pun intended. But I was interested in getting into the death and dying industry, and not on the usual end that you find yourself on in video games, populating that industry, but rather servicing the remains of people that have passed on and pick them up, I guess, in an ambulance, bring them, I don't know how people get a dead person from their home where they have fallen down the stairs to the place where they do autopsies, or I don't know. I'm kind of not super interested in the autopsy angle. I'm more into dressing the corpse and setting it for its funeral and kind of planning the funeral and executing, not again in this context the usual executing you would be doing, the funeral, and taking the hearse all the way to the graveyard, and I don't know, just that side of things. So it's kind of an underexplored area, and I'm wondering if we can find some sort of an angle to make it more interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the clock there.
So I weirdly love this, and I'll tell you why. I started thinking as you were saying this, wouldn't it be interesting to map this, or maybe it's less interesting to you, to map it to a franchise? Like, what if you had to do funeral preparations and eulogies for like a bunch of like bosses killed in a Metal Gear Solid series or something like that? And then that way, when you're putting together little, speeches and prayers that the priest can give, like you can say little things that about them, and you can get things wrong and people will like gasp in their chairs and that sort of thing.
I feel like, not to push back, but part of the aspect of being like a funeral director that seems kind of romantic to me is just the anonymity of the people that are coming in. Just this idea that you have no idea who this person is, but they meant the world to their friends and family, and you get to learn things about them, and you get to kind of like make them look their very best. It was a couple months ago, I watched a movie with a friend of mine called Bernie, which is a Jack Black movie where he plays like an assistant funeral director.
Right. They spend the weekend at his house. They convince everyone he's still alive.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into the plot of the movie too deeply. It's got some interesting, I see it's not too far from the truth though.
Oh no! All right, I guess I got to see this.
Sorry,
movie.
I'm late on the joke there. But anyways, it's more than just a weekend. You see a lot of kind of the preparation process of how he's kind of preparing the bodies, and he's instructing a class on how to properly prepare a body in the first scene of the movie, which I thought was just very like kind of solemnly respectful. Like, he doesn't know this person, but when the people come in, and he's always there to kind of like console people. He's very like gentle spirited, and very good with the widows and the widowers. I don't know, just that kind of thing seems kind of interesting, like a real kind of different emotional ask than you get from a lot of games.
I think that's interesting. And if you have a mechanic where you're being deferential to the family, you're listening to stories, maybe you can have conversations with strangers, maybe some strangers that seem lonely or seem like they want to have those conversations. And maybe that's even a mechanic of learning who, wants to have a conversation and when, and then learn things about the person, and then be able to share those sort of things with members of the family. And maybe you can even overstep, right? Sharing a secret unintentionally, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think this would work well as The Sims kind of game. Specifically, there's a mode in The Sims 3 where you can choose a career of a fashionista or fashion, like a stylist, and people will come into your shop and you can dress them up. And I always found that to be very fun because I would dress them in ridiculous outfits that they would wear all throughout town. Sadly, one of the great careers not brought back for The Sims 4. So yeah, I don't know, dressing up characters in such a way and having somewhat realistically simulated characters coming in and kind of going through the whole funeral procession could also work in a similar manner to those like Theme Hospital or Sim Hospital, those types of games where you're kind of trying to upscale and maximize the business of whatever funeral home you're having by building new wings and increasing capacity and trying to balance like the types of challenges that come with those SimCity-like games.
It's sort of crazy to me. I was at a funeral fairly recently, actually, and
I don't mean to get into unpleasant territory here.
No. But I think it serves as a good example and kind of interesting because I was just as interested in the mechanics of how the funeral home was operating as I was, being present for the funeral itself. Yeah. Because as our funeral was finishing, they had like begun filtering in people to another one of the rooms that presumably had one of their loved ones in it. And, for some period of time, I guess an amount that funeral home deemed tasteful or whatever, there was 2 funerals happening in the same space for 2 different families. And it was this bizarre thing of like maybe you have in any other world 2 different families who are strangers to each other. Maybe they even practice different religions. They're all from different areas of the country, are all having this, hopefully cathartic experience about their loved ones. And like, how does a funeral home balance that? Like you said, opening up new wings, like how many funerals if you're just the one funeral director, how many can you run at a time successfully if they require some like manual intervention?
That's another interesting aspect, the kind of religious aspect. And so maybe you have to, if you want to expand your audience into different religions, you have to like staff people of priests or whatever from different religions, or rabbis, or sorry, I'm not equipped with all of the information that I need there.
No, I know.
Or maybe you're redecorating rooms with different types of like religious decorations. And if you forget to take one of the crosses down, then the Hindu service is going to be very upset, that kind of thing.
I think one of the things that's kind of, depending on how much you play this for, not laughs, but like trying to keep it lighthearted, you almost like need a Yelp-like score or reviews of the same way that like SimCity and City Skylines have that fake Twitter ticker of like what attendees are saying. Potentially you have people going, that was a very nice service, or that was a very, so like, and maybe different religions want to celebrate differently. Like, a religion that might celebrate the afterlife and really look, have people looking forward to it is going to, want a different vibe out of their funeral.
I would love if if dissatisfaction with the funeral was kind of visually communicated while it was happening. So maybe you would get people booing in the stage, or there's a booing in the audience rather. But there's a great sight gag in the film UHF, Weird Al Yankovic's movie, where there's like an ad for a kind of half-rate funeral home, and you can see like body parts sticking up from the ground just because they were really poorly buried. So I guess, if you don't spend enough on your gravekeeper or something, like maybe the graveyard gets robbed by a mad scientist at night, or maybe, if you don't spend enough on the burial team, then you do get like like pieces of people just like sticking out of the ground like that.
Oh my God, can you imagine? Ooh. Maybe you just like, although I guess it's a funeral, so it's always hard to gauge, but just the number of people like crying would be a pretty good indicator to me too. Like, but I guess if you're a funeral director, crying might be, in your usual oeuvre. So maybe you need something a little bit more.
More crying is a good thing in that case.
Right, potentially. So maybe you want gasps or something to be the indicator of you're doing kind of a horrible job.
Or people throwing tomatoes at the stage. Like, I'm okay with this being kind of cartoonish and kind of over the top, like you would get in a 2 Point Hospital, where like all the afflictions that people have are so like cartoonish that it doesn't really kind of like bring up the real horror of being in a hospital.
Right.
We're just about out of time. Let's go ahead and call that one there. I think we've run a good course with it. I am coming in with a name for this one. I'm particularly fond of the name Hearse Story.
Oh, God. You are legally not allowed to say the phrase, no pun intended, any longer.
There must be some part of my mind that is pushing it forward. So whether or not my ego recognizes it, my id fully intends for puns.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go ahead and see what's on your mind today.
I was thinking about this sort of occurrence that happens in so many games we're playing, armies going to war. I'm kind of interested in pitching this week a game about armies navigating through war. And what I mean by that is a game maybe a little physicsy in nature, where you are playing a commanding officer and you have got a massive sort of encampment of troops that are following you around like a giant horde, and you have to navigate your group through treacherous terrain from battle to battle. You have to keep them well fed and keep morale high through like climbing blizzardy mountains and all this sort of thing. And generally, you are pun intended there, I suppose. And generally, you are trying to keep your troop safe, healthy, and happy from battle to battle.
All right, let's go ahead and start the clock again. I'm hearing this is kind of about the transportation through treacherous terrains, places that are obviously not meant for people to go through, trying to bring large vehicles through jungles and deserts and tundras and places that are meant to be inhospitable, or maybe even have buried landmines or anti-tank defenses, and just trying to kind of push through.
I think aesthetically you could even take the turn of these are, sort of lo-fi medieval knights even. I think the imagery of the Banner Saga stands out singularly in my mind as like something that I would love to feel, but I've never quite played a game that makes me feel like, oh, I really have to keep these people alive and, get them through this experience that they're having.
Yeah, it makes me think back to that story. I think it's true, right? Was it Alexander the Great or Hannibal or somebody who brought elephants through like a part of North Africa or Europe or something like that?
I'm not sure. What's the story?
I mean, basically just that he brought a bunch of elephants in spaces that elephants weren't accustomed to traveling.
Right. I wouldn't be super chill with that if I was an elephant, so that sounds spot on.
And I mean, there's stories of people crossing land between waters and carrying their entire ship over those spots and having to kind of arrange for that level of cooperation. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and I thought maybe there could be some kind of mechanic where while you have this kind of large, like you're the leader, you're the flag bearer or whatever, you're marching forward, and of course like this kind of physicsy horde is, I keep calling them your physicsy army is following you, and maybe on PC we get a mouse, almost RTS total war-like controls where I can select groups and maybe micro groups within the army kind of lose morale, and I have to peel them off and give them individual breaks and things like that, where I have to tend to these micro groups. And then like if you can get a micro group to be in good enough spirits and high enough spirits, then maybe you get something like, they start singing, and that provides an entire buff to your whole, section of that army that starts singing along with them. And like that feeling of, just lonely warriors with seemingly nothing better to do than to be with each other.
So what are you able to do to improve the conditions? What are the options that we have as the player? Thinking back to early Age of Empires games, maybe I'm making the wrong poll there, but some of the RTS games I've played in the past, they have a lot of attention paid to the formation in which people are marching, which I can imagine would be useful if you're trying to kind of orchestrate the best way through something. Maybe like a V formation would be best for certain terrains, and maybe, different shapes. I'm not a army expert, but what else could we do to improve conditions for the soldiers?
I think that's interesting. Maybe there's also like some different marches and such that you learn, or different poses and techniques or requests that you can yell, and maybe the whole thing feels a little bit like Journey, where you have this sort of non-verbal talk about, that Simlish example that you had in yours. You have this non-verbal communication with your group as you try and pull them through some traumatic experiences. Maybe there's, animal attacks and something like that, and you can say things, maybe have encouraging like shouts. You can start trying to sing, and then you can also maybe just the general pace that you set. Like if you're mostly concerned with not this like RTS mouse interaction, and it's a little bit more about the, controlling an individual avatar with a sphere of influence, like the same way that you had that sort of sphere of warmth inside of Journey.
Oh yeah, so managing warmth as well. I think that setting up camps is an interesting exercise, but also thinking about the comfort during the walk as well. Is that a thing? Like, how do armies stay warm while marching? Because you can't have a fire with you. Did they just try to bundle up and use their own body movement to kind of generate some heat?
Yeah, maybe there's like ways to, just through holding down different buttons or articulating joysticks in such a way, you can like ask people to tighten up formation and stuff when people are getting cold. And of course, like, then your army will get cold sort of front to back, right? The people in the very front are taking the worst of the cold, and you need to figure out a way to sort of cycle the group so that, you know, the next warmest people are always sort of standing in for the rest of the army, and no one.
Yeah, to kind of rotate them out.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. So what else? So we have the environment, the mud and the mountains and everything that comes with it, the water and all of that. We have warmth. What other obstacles could get in our way when we're out marching?
I think you could do almost, you know, I hate to go direct from history, but taking on things like, you know, wars from different periods. You would have like jungle warfare, and you would be dealing with all sorts of insect and like potentially hidden enemies. Not necessarily like I don't even think necessarily you have to fight enemies, but so much as like the mental threat of people losing their direction, like a forest level set up to be super disorienting is kind of interesting to me. And like really that feeling of like, we didn't always have, like, let's take away the map marker, let's take away the GPS. We didn't have those things for those people. So like create the sense of space and potentially at different points, maybe a little bit of aimlessness.
I always thought that navigation using like compasses and maps where you don't have like a flashing marker as to where you are currently has been a really interesting challenge in video games. I think that Firewatch had a mode where you were kind of on your own as far as navigation goes, without very much supernatural help, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to see more of that kind of thing.
Yeah, holding out a small compass or asking someone to do that. I also love like the idea of a little bit of what they built in with something like Sea of Thieves, where there's just rudimentary music playing / you know, the marching drum stuff, and at different points, if you can get your group to sing, like part of the experience throughout the journey is just like hearing all the war songs that can be sung by your team. Just like this very like, by the end, the same way that you feel that sort of, oh my goodness feeling with Journey, even without the that additional level that I guess I don't have to spoil, but statute of limitations is getting pretty close on that. Yeah, even without that sort of interesting spin on it, I think you could do that. And maybe this is a multiplayer game, right? Maybe like everybody's controlling these little micro groups within, and you're waiting to see what a commander does that is, you know, assigned.
So there would be potentially like one commander and then a lot of players playing the individual units or something like that? Because I can imagine that wouldn't be super engrossing for those that are just marching.
Yeah, just moving your joystick in time. Yeah, maybe, I mean, that sounds like it probably wouldn't work too well. So,
but, you know, we're not going to count anything out. I'm sure we can find ways to make it engrossing, but, you know, sometimes choosing our battles as well.
Ooh, oh my God. You can't help it, can you?
All right, let's close that down. Let's come up with a name. Do you have anything in mind?
No, I didn't, but you, I think, have directly inspired the name by your very words during this session. Are you ready for it?
Okay.
The Mud and the Mountains.
Hey, that's not bad.
No, not bad at all.
Or M&M for short.
That's right.
Let's go now to our community and see what you all have for us today. You have all come through in force, which is very much appreciated. On our Twitter account, we put out a call for some more video game pitches because we were getting low. You have not disappointed. It's been wonderful. So we're going to go through in order. And the very first one is potentially a little tricky because there is a game that fits this description very well, but we'll see if we can take it in a different direction. Garruth Burningham says, toast the game. So I guess we'll go ahead and start the clock.
I know what you mean by that we're skirting the line right into somebody else's territory here.
Let's see. What is it called? Is it Toast Simulator?
I think it's I Am Toast or something.
That's it. Yeah. I Am Toast. Right. Which is a game where it's one of those kind of like silly physicsy games, kind of like Mount Your Friends, where each corner of the toast is mapped to a different face button. And then as you're holding that face button, you can manipulate that corner in particular. And if you're not holding it, then it kind of like sticks to whatever it's attached to. And so you use that to kind of perform these platforming feats and kind of, crawl and flip your way around the kitchen or various other spots. But yeah, essentially you're just a piece of bread looking to become toast. And it has some of that kind of like awkward control appeal that you would get in an Octodad or a Gang Beasts or something like that.
So what makes our toast different is the question, right? Like, what is our toast's motivation? Are we playing as toast? Maybe our game is just about loving the delicious creation that is toast.
Maybe getting toasted is kind of like bread's bar mitzvah or something like that, where it kind of transitions from being a child into being an adult. And the toaster could have different settings for like different professions. So he could be kind of managing a like Darwinia like society of little bread people and kind of like through their toasting, choose what roles they have in society.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Like depending on how they get toasted.
Yeah, maybe it's not even like, maybe you're not even selecting from a menu. Like maybe it's how long they're in the toaster. Like if they're in there very long, they become very like tough and like really firm and good warriors. Maybe if they're not in there for very long, they could become like, I don't know, artists or something soft like that.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. And I think if you like pair it with maybe you supplement it with the concept of like, forget about length. What about method of toasting? Like you can toast on the grill, you can toast in a toaster oven, you can toast in a toaster.
Okay.
You can also do like
you can get a toaster that imprints a picture of Darth Vader on it.
That's true. Oh my God, the license and tie-in here is strong.
Steam Workshop is bustling.
That's right. That's kind of cool. I do like the idea of having different, like a little toast society, and everybody has, oh man, you could even do, maybe I'm off on a tangent here, but I'm thinking of Spore H. I'm thinking of like start life as, just like wheat in a field and like, and get through, like be chopped and be ground and like go through all the stages that it takes from, just wispy little grains to,
That's
your
interesting.
actual
So little
toast.
mini games along the way, like you have to kind of bend your stock of grain away from like locusts that come swooping in.
Yeah, it's like instead of life of pie, it's life of toast.
You could become pie if you really needed to.
That's true, in a pinch. That selfishly makes me want to generically like just make you a carb, because there's like so many like, and life possibilities as a carb. You can become pasta. You can be, I guess bread is technically pasta. Maybe this serves as both a diabetes education game and a game where you're having a good time controlling some bread, because you would learn really quickly, I forgot that pasta's bread and that all these other things are also bread.
We don't get enough diabetes education games. Ever since Captain Novolin really broke the seal on that one, it's been nothing for many years.
You would listen, per capita from people who are diagnosed with it, I would say that we're really falling short on the country's need for diabetes education here.
That is something that like legitimately worries me. Because my favorite foods are bread and candy, so I do not set myself up for success.
Oh my God. Well, okay, you'll be okay. Is that comforting?
Well, as long as you say so.
Okay, I'm playing as Did we determine if we're playing as bread or not?
Yeah, there's a lot of directions we can go with this. I think that the springy motion that toast makes when it exits the toaster is pretty fun. There's some stuff to be done with that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe if you're going through kind of like a life cycle thing, like maybe like the spread that's put on you is kind of like the ultimate determinator of your role in society. Although at the same time, I don't know if I really like the implications of somebody who has been prematurely jammed to be kind of out of the running for their hopes and dreams. I think that has some...
I definitely think that being able to... It sounds like there would be some fun joy to be had of like not going the full weird physics route and actually making like an honest attempt at maybe even a character platformer where you are just straight up in earnest playing Toast and you are living through the ages of your village, and they are appropriately going from grain all the way to like, it's like Old Man's Journey. You end as Toast.
Yeah, just is that how Old Man's Journey ended? I got stuck in that one.
Yeah, you become Toast in the end.
I'm ashamed to admit. I thought that was where it was going. I saw a lot of hints in that direction.
Right. Well, there's foreshadowing in the, with the toaster and everything.
Yeah, so one of my very favorite things in video games is when we are able to kind of scale down to a world that would be too small for humans to inhabit and have a world that's set on like like the kitchen, but at the smaller level of bread. So you got that in I Am Toast. You would get that in like that Toy Story skateboarding game that Neversoft did at one point. Little Big Planet has touches of that here and there. Just any game that lets you kind of like really get small, I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think like maybe even, even though you are bread and toast and all those things, the whole thing takes place at something that feels the size of cereal. You're like Toast cereal or something. Cinnamon
Toast Crunch, the taste that adults can't see or something. I don't remember how that goes.
Oh my God, speaking of sugar and carbs, a weakness of mine is Cinnamon Toast Crunch, to be sure.
Well, let's get diabetes together. We can go half and half on the insulin.
Yeah.
We're Americans for context.
Yeah.
We can't afford insulin by ourselves.
No, I know, right. If that joke didn't land with you, you must be able to afford it where you are.
You must be in a first world country.
Yeah, that's right. One of those. I gotta get me one of those.
Anyways, so yeah, let's think of some interesting mechanics. I think we got a lot of good set dressing out of the way. So let's say you play as all these kind of like steps up to becoming bread, but I want toasting to become a transformative process that changes the way that the game is played after that. What would be a conducive gameplay style for toasting to really kind of flip on its head?
Well, maybe toasting yourself is an act you can do multiple times. So you can kind of...
Interesting.
Like get sort of moist or wet or something and soften yourself back out, in which case you're kind of bendy and you can worm your way through parts of the environment. If you toast yourself, you become rigid but also strong, so you can potentially wedge things open. Maybe there's even different points in the game and your health is like how much you kind of scrape yourself. And as you scrape yourself, you could get smaller potentially or thinner.
You leave crumbs behind.
Right. And of course, like if you scrape yourself, maybe you get like 3 scrapes per level. You can't over scrape yourself. And every level starts with you like going fresh out of the toaster or fresh out of the bread bag.
I like that. Being able to transform from being toast to bread again and then back to toast. It's kind of like, Unravel could have those kind of physicsy, platformy, puzzly type of puzzles in the way that require these different forms.
My brothers and I used to joke that bread actually never goes bad. It just like goes from bread to it goes stale and you turn it into like a crouton when you toast it, and then that goes soft and you get stuffing, and then you just like let your stuffing go moist and reform it into bread again, and it just becomes more seasoned. That's all that happens.
Wow, so that does get me curious. If you leave toast out or put it in the refrigerator, does it become bread again, or is its like structure changed in some substantial way? I've never tried it.
That's a good question. I think like we'll never know because mold is like stopping us from knowing the answer to this. But yeah, stale toast, I think starts to get soft again. I'm thinking of like a pizza crust.
Okay.
Even a crispy pizza crust goes soft,
Okay,
right?
yeah. Let's call that one. And we have a name supplied. Toast the Game. It sounds like there's a lot of ideas out there. We've got a bit that congealed, but maybe needs a little bit more to get over the finish line to turn it into a retail product. But that's up for the bread lobby. If you want to see this fully funded, then we're going to need some of that bread advertising money that we see flying around so much.
That this idea isn't quite baked yet.
It's a little half-baked.
It's half-baked.
Even if it is half-baked, we do not want to discourage you from pitching your favorite games and your brand new game ideas to us. You can do that by submitting your game ideas to playwrightcast.com/pitch, playwrightcast@gmail.com, or tweet us like a bunch of people have done recently at playwrightcast.
Special thank you to Protodome for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. It's very good, and you can check out a link from our site. And shout out to Cane and Rinse, the entire website, caneandrinse.com. In fact, the latest episode of Cane and Rinse deals with Inside, which is one of my very favorite games this generation, I think. Is that safe to say? I think it's this generation.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to do a little self-plug today. I have been away from the game for a very long time, and I have started once again publishing design tutorials to YouTube and my own site, ryanquintal.com. So if you're interested in playing around with user experience and user interface stuff and Sketch and those type of pieces of software, those will start happening. They're long videos. They're, 30, 40 minutes each, but hopefully you find
Any
them.
particular subject to kind of get people interested?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the two that I've done since I've been back is designing an app sign-up screen from scratch. This is sort of a login screen. And designing a messages list with symbols and overrides in Sketch. So yeah, a lot of nerdy stuff, but if you like design and hopefully if you like maybe a little bit of Bob Rossi vibes, I'm trying to keep it pretty chill, then you'll like this.
Well, with that, let's wrap up the show with a miniature pitch. What I have for you is a game that is controlled entirely using gymnasium whistles.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
God help me.
Make friends with your neighbors. We'll see you next week.
Bye.